Welcome into the Not All There podcast. I am Chad. I am your host. And folks, we have something I always refer to we, but honestly, it's just me in here. I do all of it, and I really don't know what I'm doing. I have for you something pretty spectacular. Now, for you, it could be spectacular in an amazing way, or it could be spectacular in a confusing way. But I will assure you, you will leave these conversations with thoughts in your head, and you will mull over them. And there's a great chance you'll circle back and have another listen. My friend Jim is with me, and we rattled on for about 90 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop those up into 3 separate parts, because we take a deep dive, and Jim takes us on places that I didn't think were possible. And when you're listening to it, you're thinking to yourself, what does this have to do with addiction or recovery or sobriety? And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm prefacing it with absolutely everything. Okay? Everything he talks about revolves around his sobriety, his story, his journey, what it was like, what happened, and what it is like now. And I got to stop talking. I don't want to oversell this. So get a drink, get some popcorn, focus, sit back, and enjoy the conversation with the amazing Jim. A couple months ago, Graham came home from school, and he's like, I learned about the molasses flood. And do you know about this thing?
No.
1919, Boston, January 15th, 1919 in Boston. A 2.3 million gallon tank that holds molasses that was being imported up from the Caribbean. It was full.
Imagine the size.
They said it was shaped like a tuna can. It was this giant
obviously
tank
without subcompartments.
Oh, it was just a fucking design nightmare. But anyway, they cut all these corners because that was all about the profit. There was a ton of money in molasses at the time. Apparently, there was a byproduct of molasses that they would use in weapons in World War I. I forgot what it was used in bombs. And anyway, part of it was explosive. And this was just raw molasses. But the 14th of January, it was like 2 degrees, very cold. So the molasses was thick. It warmed up to like 41 degrees the next day on the 15th, and the tank erupted. And it was in this part of Boston, so it was elevated, and this tidal wave of molasses just like rolled down the hill and laid waste to everything in front of it.
Bhopal in Boston.
And it was fucking insane. Like people, they would... they pull people out of the molasses, and they made these field medic houses, whatever, hospitals everywhere. And they would bring the people in, and they were covered head to toe in molasses. And then the molasses started to like harden. And they it would like harden into their eyes and ears. And anyway,
go back to our Star Wars thing, talking about carbonite. They froze Han Solo.
Well, maybe that's where they got the idea for.
I bet.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, I think I learned this in American history. There was the triangle: slavery, rum, and molasses in the colonial era. So molasses has always been a big deal.
Yeah, I had no idea.
But
ton of money in molasses.
Yeah, so the indifference to human life at the commercial level.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the Palatine, Ohio train wreck.
Right, yeah.
So... I mean, it almost sounds like an oil spill.
Yeah, but it was fucking molasses. Poor horses, man. The horses got caught in it. They had to shoot the horses. It's awful. But speaking of Star Wars, so was that your thing back in the day? Were you there for like the beginning?
I was, and I feel like people fell into 2 camps: Star Wars and Alien.
Oh.
And I was an Alien. Yeah. I was a Ridley Scott guy.
Yeah, how could you not be?
So, to me, I mean, Star Wars is okay,
Yeah.
but not the way some people felt about it.
Right.
Whereas Alien had and Blade Runner had much longer term implications. Star Wars had, of course, huge financial implications.
Yeah. But I mean, Alien and Blade Runner hit a little close to home. Were you? Did you used to sneak booze into the theater or anything like that?
No, I mean, I didn't. I didn't really start drinking in an alcoholic way. I never had that experience, the come to Jesus, come to God moment.
Oh, yeah, that's what mine was like.
About.
Like, whoo.
No, not when I was a kid. It was when I remembered it because I had some Jack Daniels. I was in my Fiat station wagon.
Yes, you were.
And it was
what color was it?
And it was light blue or green with a tan interior.
Amazing,
a little boxy thing. I would drive it back and forth to Georgetown in Illinois, over the Appalachian Mountains, which you could barely cross, especially if I had anything in it. Yeah, like a full tank of gas. I mean, the truckers, that was back in the 55-mile-an-hour day.
Yeah.
So that I probably got away with more because I didn't have to go over 55.
Right.
I could, hit 50. I mean, we're talking about the Appalachians, not like where you grew up.
Yeah, well, no, I know, but like Fiat, man, fix it again, Tony.
I'd be, have that towed up and then coast down. So I was living with my father. It was like last year, his drinking. I'm sure I've told this story elsewhere.
Yeah. But just, for those that may not know it, what was that? So he got sober.
He got sober young.
Okay.
In the 60s, in his 20s. And he was a brilliant man. Both my parents are brilliant people. And he was I guess at that time, there weren't that many young people in AA.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of a darling, and then he relapsed. And so through the 70s, he was drinking, and then he got sober again, like in 80. So this is 79. I'm home from Georgetown working to make money for college. He's gotten me 2 jobs. I'm working in a factory in Waukegan, which is a little industrial town, like the Trump voters live in now, right?
Yeah.
So maybe with some good reason. I mean, it was these companies, like you were talking about the molasses thing, it was just trashed. U.S. Steel, American Gypsum,
where I grew up,
John Manville, Evinrude, Motors.
The timber industry in the 90s got just absolutely squashed when the Clinton administration federalized all this forest land, and it was like, well, I can support that, but what about the communities that you're wiping out?
Okay, so that's the 90s. That's an action by the federal government. I'm talking about the action of the private corporations.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
And the environmental.
Yeah.
And then also, because Japan and Germany had all their factories bombed, everybody's riding out the 50s and 60s without any competition. And now here we are, the 70s. And it's not that way. So even the little company I bought, it was kind of precursor to the Reagan era, had been bought by a Canadian guy who would not put any money into it, and we could not compete. I only worked there a year, and I learned that much from the chief engineer. So they're using old furnaces. It was a metal. They made super hard metals out of powder, metals for oil drilling, tearing up asphalts in street, and anti-tank shells to be fired by our jets.
Amen.
So working with old equipment, and these workers were doing the best they could. It was terrible. Anyway, I had that, and then I would, on weekends, nights, and at lunch, I would serve summonses and subpoenas in my Fiat on people.
Oh,
so
I did not know that.
I'm living with my dad, who I'd never spent much time with, especially after he started drinking again, watching him drink. And I'm not really a drinker. So it's abhorrent to me. And then Buck Rogers in the 25th Century comes out. And I think the premiere was that September 79. And I've looked it up before. That was the one. And I had a bottle of Jack, the Fiat, and Buck Rogers in my vision. And I saw that movie a lot. So it's classic fish out of water story. And I've been, anticipating your show here, Chad. I was thinking, what the hell's the deal? Everyone's got a reason they drank. Oh, I couldn't fit in. Oh, I wasn't funny. Oh, I couldn't get girls. I didn't have those issues. I don't wish to appear immodest. It was really, for me, about escape from what I perceived as the mundane to something more interesting.
Right.
It's almost like an arrogant intellectual pursuit.
Absolutely.
And so this guy, by definition, he's going to be different. He's not in his own century. So everything he does, everything he is going to be different, cool, interesting, original. And I suppose that's what I identified with. And that's really what, and I didn't, frankly, did I even know? I didn't know that at the time. I'm not sure how much I even know that now. So that's when it began. And I didn't even drink constantly. It developed through my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And then to the end of my 20s, it got worse. So at that time, I do remember feeling giddy. And it was really because I wanted to see this damn movie, just like I wanted to see Alien. Because I could tell when I saw the trailer for that movie, especially after seeing Star Wars, it was same thing. It's something different. It's something original. People say, well, it's really just a horror show in outer space. And I suppose that's true. But if you think about it, those workers were in that ship were really like the ones I was working with in the factory.
Absolutely. And they did such a good job with those characters because I relate to them as they're just everyday, like, They were people I knew. Yeah.
In Star Wars, even though Luke Hamill's supposed to be just a regular guy who gets his shot at taking on the Galactic Empire.
Nobody can relate to that.
It's absurd, So, and the Force thing, because no one can only a few select people can have the Force. What's super undemocratic, it's not egalitarian, it's not American. And I'm thinking, why is everybody going for this shit? The alien thing where you're like the dupes of the corporations, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is why no one went for it.
So does that mean that the alien represents AI, maybe? Is that what it was?
I took a course in college. It was Gnosticism.
Oh my God.
That was a big one. And it was co-taught by an English professor and this wizard from Harvard that they brought in.
Oh my God.
And so I wrote a paper on alien and Gnosticism.
And
to me, it just represents the, I don't want to say the chaotic, which would be explored in, the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Right.
Based on Michael Crichton's book.
Right.
Now, talk about a brilliant guy.
Oh man, those books.
Well, I read some of his like Andromeda Strain.
Yeah.
You getting a call?
I don't know what the hell that was.
I'll drink coffee while you're answering.
You go ahead. No. There we go. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're back.
So the things I'm talking to you about now are the things that I would like to have done if I hadn't drank. You see, that's the interruption. And that's why I think it's cool you're doing this. So you're like, I perceived in you, I'm sorry, but I think I did 10 years ago that you had the interest and the capability.
You had me pegged.
But you weren't ready.
No.
And so now here it is. Look at the fucking hit you took.
Yeah.
And some of that isn't even necessarily because of addiction, but because addiction prevented you from addressing the things that you needed to clear away so you could do these other things.
Absolutely.
Which I've heard you talk about.
Well, and that's the grateful alcoholic, statement I've heard from people. And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean that you're grateful you're an alcoholic? Like my life, I burned it down. But sitting here across from you now, it's like, you wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be here if we weren't like recovering from our addictions. If we didn't take that journey, that path, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why people say it and I understand why other people think it's strange. I mean, I
still think it's strange, but in my mind, I have to have some inkling of understanding where that comes from. Like a belief for me, like I don't need to believe what the other people believe in, but if I can get like a nugget of like, I don't know, understanding out of it, I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why they're that way. I don't know. That's how my brain works anyway.
That's why they're that way. Well, all right. Well, I don't know if that you're doing a diagnosis or you're trying to impose meaning on something, which is what I was talking about.
Yeah.
With Crichton and Alien.
Yeah, I guess that's I maybe a little bit of both.
So I'll follow that because it's what I'm interested in, and I'm here. So we'll put that what you were just talking about that, which is I think an important conversation or topic. The impulse people feel it's more than an impulse to say, "I'm so grateful I'm an alcoholic." What's behind that emotionally?
Exactly. That. Yes. Thank you.
Apart from whatever analytical breakdown may support that.
Right.
Emotion.
Right.
So to me, Alien is really, Crichton then picks it up with his whole thing where Jeff Goldblum talks about chaos theory.
Right.
The alien is potentially that, although the robot in that movie says it's really more. It's a design thing. But is it designed from? I approached it from an evolutionary standpoint. Like natural selection. I think I didn't really care as much for Prometheus and all of that, and I didn't watch the one after, where maybe it was created, so it's not really the result of natural selection. So when Scott's doing that, he's working from a screenplay by Dan O'Bannon, who's been maybe thinking about this, or maybe just wants to make a shitload of money off his screenplay. But we were talking about Crichton. That guy's operating at a whole nother level. I mean, Ridley Scott is in his late 20s. I don't know how old the band is, but I think he's still enough. Whereas Crichton's been writing stuff since the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, he passed away in the 90s even, I think, didn't he?
Maybe.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book called Andromeda Strain, which has been made into a couple things.
I haven't read it. I'm aware of it.
But he's really, I don't want to say it's Frankenstein, but, it's sending a satellite into space. It's to collect potential things that can be used as weapons. It comes back, and of course, it gets away from you. He does a thing where a book about a drug for schizophrenia, which turns people into psychotic super genius killers.
Oh my God, I have to find that one. Sounds amazing.
And then he's doing that in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, and he writes so well that it's so easy to read.
Well, and he got brilliant plots.
Yeah.
But in Andromeda Strain, some of the things that happen are small things. So the warning, they have all these systems to prevent disaster because they know things. There's the classic, hey, let's bring this thing back and study it. And which, it's of course going to get away. Whereas they're going to, versus, well, let's bring this thing back and study it and take every effing precaution. Wait, and then it still's not enough. So in his thing, a tiny piece of paper gets caught between a warning bell and the hammer.
Oh.
And that's it. That cascade starts from there. So like in Jurassic Park, that goofball with the computer, it's a similar thing. It doesn't take that much for things to go awry. So Andromeda Strain may be early way of his viewing chaos theory. There's just certain things like weather and stuff you can't really predict how they're going to react. It's, is that addiction? Is that why Alien appealed to me? I don't know. So maybe it's back to people who say, well, I'm so glad I'm an alcoholic. I want to impose meaning on that, or I want to see meaning on that. Otherwise, in effect, the plot, by imposing a sinister purpose on it, we're going to have a corporation. It's going to go get this thing. It was really made in the past as an ultimate killing machine. In some ways, as sinister as that is, and this is what I did in my paper, that's more comforting than, well, natural selection just produced this goddamn thing. It's inherent to the universe that it exists, which is the worst.
Yeah. You
see, but natural selection and evolution created this creature, or an evil corporation did, or some, prior precursors to humans with a God complex. At first blush, you'd think, well, evolution is more comforting, but no, really, the evil perpetrator people, that's much more comforting.
Absolutely, because you can prevent the evil people.
Right. So that's the joke. You think you're being, we're going to make these evil people really scary. But the scarier thing is it just evolved.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
That's it. And there it is, which is really closer to the nature of things.
Absolutely. And so that ties back into addiction. Is it a natural thing or is it a man-made thing?
I once tried to figure out if alcohol, mind you, what its relationship is to Earth's early atmosphere, but I don't know enough chemistry.
Oh, Jesus.
Because we evolved, from what would basically be viruses.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which are like fragments of DNA, right?
Right.
That borrow our cells. Why make your own? That sounds like an alcoholic.
We've always been selfish.
Own cell when I can just hijack this schlub's cells. Then
I
I can do my thing.
I could fix him.
Well, that too. We can make him better. We can improve him. But I mean, really, that's like, what's the difference between an alcoholic and a virus? Not much.
Yeah.
And you pass it on, the negative or the positive.
And that's why I was curious if addiction is a natural occurrence, right? I mean, in my case, absolutely. Like it just sort of evolved in my family. It just went passed on. And it really is just so many tentacles or branches off my family tree have addiction issues. Everybody's got like an alcohol problem, and then it just sort of, branches off from the alcohol into whatever it can be. Those that don't do the alcohol, they've still got that compulsiveness in their brain that, I don't know, triggers them to try and control something that they have no control over.
Well, I'm hearing 2 or 3, maybe more different things. Is there a latency or potentiality that isn't actualized? Is there, where it is actualized, where you're an addict? Is there something else? So I was actually in a meeting this week, and someone made a comment that, where you were at the beginning of what you just said, how it spreads.
Yeah.
And, there's in meetings, people talk about my disease is out there doing push-ups.
Right.
Where they anthropomorphize it.
Yeah.
And I don't usually go for that.
Right.
Or it's cunning, baffling. It's the alien.
Right.
Okay. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Yeah.
It's the alien.
Yeah.
So, but what you're talking about, I think, and what this person was talking about, it's more like if you look at diseases like cholera or the bubonic, how do they spread? They have different modalities.
Right.
Some kill their host right away and then
Right.
find other vectors. Some let their host live for a long time. So why? They can use the host to spread it. That maybe is closer to alcoholism. So if it's going back to natural selection, some people think natural selection counts for everything. Is it, does it want to perpetuate itself? Is that, like a virus does, but it doesn't do it in a conscious way. It just perpetuates because if it does one thing, its chances of surviving are higher. And if it does another, its chances of surviving are lower. So with alcoholism, there's definitely a way to go where the chances of its being perpetuated to others or through generations are higher, which is if it doesn't kill people right away.
Mm-hmm.
The longer someone drinks, the greater the chance that they can spread it.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas if you kill someone off right away,
that's it.
What do they call it? That's where disease burns out, right? All the potential hosts. So now you're talking about the people with the latency that that other category of folks who haven't crossed over but could. They don't maybe get it because they don't come in contact with a person that's going to trigger it. The vector. Whatever that's not the vector, the host, but the vector is whatever the mechanism of transmission is. That socialization, the family unit. Do we know? But I think it's also very much like domestic violence, where you'll see. I had a client. She wouldn't. A lot of these people are victims of abuse. They don't acknowledge it. The Stockholm syndrome, in a way.
Absolutely.
So this woman, I had her law lined up. We went to court. And we're ready to go in front of it. And she changed her mind right there. He's looking at me. I don't want to go ahead. And a few months later, she comes back and she's like, I'm ready to go ahead. I said, well, what's changed? She says, well, I saw my son behaving the same way as his father, who I was trying to get the order of protection against. And if I realize now, if I don't do something, it's going to be passed on. So there's people who think that memes are basically, cultural, I don't want to use the term viruses, but they spread.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The more attractive they are, the more they propagate.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I drank that day, I was going to see that movie. And I think Alien had either been out already, but I had a very tight group of high school friends. And I wanted to talk to them about this new movie, Alien. And they were not interested.
Right.
Believe it or not. Just like your people. Holy dude, Chad, you're the host. Cut this guy off. I'm going to drink now. I wasn't before.
Oh, no. This is...
I realized that these guys weren't interested. They were great. and especially in an alcoholic family where you're looking for that, we all, separate. There's a certain psychological processes occurred, right? And during high school, there's that separation from family, and it's called individuation, coupled with integration. And I don't know if those are the right terms, but you get the idea. You leave the family, become your own person.
Right.
Wow. But let's call it individuation and integration, because then I can build an insurance company for it. So these folks, because of my family, I probably needed them more than the average bear. And so they were important to me. So when they didn't share this interest, that was a blow.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that might have been a bigger blow than watching my dad drink, because they become my, that second family.
Right.
Which we all get. We get third or fourth families.
Yeah. But when that family in some capacity disappoints, it hurts like worse maybe than anything that you can get at home. At least that's what I found to be true.
Well, I know your story, and you had to deal with things that I didn't. I do know that even now as an adult, if I were to start talking like this, which I do in front of my family, they'd be like, Jimmy. They're like, oh my God, he's going to take off. Someone stop the rocket.
Quick, get the leash.
Abort. They almost panic.
Where's the airlock?
Yeah. Now if I think about it, I can hear the voice and the reaction. It is almost like panic. And to me, as you can hear me, their panic, my manic, that part of myself that is being responded to that way, that's painful. So what I've tried to sort out in recovery is that the person I was before addiction got a hold of me?
Oh.
Is that the person that I've become because I'm so glad I was an alcoholic, because it contributed now to who I am. And am I now that person in a sense more than I would have been had I not been an addict? But it's not the pure pre-addict me. It's some altered version.
The evolution.
Yeah. Well, that's right. It's rather a mutation caused by this process and the other things that happen as a consequence. And with mutations, the thing about mutations is, like I kind of said about your show, you never know where it's going to go. When you have a mutation, when the environment changes, some mutations pay off. The moths that are white get eaten against a black tree covered in New England soot. The ones this is one of the first studies, right? The ones that are black are less, because they're now camouflaged, they're less likely to be eaten. So have I been mutated? I mean, that word has potentially negative consequences. Am I a GMO? Which is why certain shows are like the X-Files, which by the way started right when I got sober.
Oh, fuck.
And it
amazing
triggered a lot for me because it's noir, and I was totally into film noir.
Yeah.
Government conspiracies, the show it was based on, or the movies was based on. I forget his name. There were 2 movies made for TV with Darren McGavin, who would go on to do Christmas Story.
Yeah. Great actor.
He made 2 movies in the 70s that influenced Chris Cook or whatever his name was.
Oh, Carter. Chris Carter.
Yeah. Although the other lesson of that show, just like the little green guy in The Mandalorian with the big eyes,
Grogu.
The other secret to that show is the 4 or 5 notes that Mark Snow came up with for him. The music.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
The music is amazing.
So I can't replicate it. Maybe you can.
Oh shit, I don't even remember how it goes.
But I think his name is Mark Snow.
Okay.
But.
And that was the first part of my conversation with Jim. What did you think? I mean, all he wanted to do was talk to people about this science fiction movie, but he felt that he couldn't talk to his friends about this movie. And thus, the journey began. I can relate to that, not specifically wanting to discuss that movie with my friends, even though I did later. But just not feeling being a part of a group or a community and not really feeling, I don't know. I guess just feeling alone in your own skin is what I think. That's what it was for me. Anyway, that's how I related to it. I hope you enjoyed it because we got 2 more coming. All right. So I'm going to make this short in case you want to skip right ahead to the next one. Be kind and loving to others. Be kind and loving to yourself. Give yourself a great big old hug. You deserve it. All right. Take care. And I'll see you on the next one.